Morning. So I did a video yesterday, the 14th of April, about my views on Trump, and I touched on a subject about the press, and I basically said I like what he's done to the press by exposing them. So wanted to do or talk a little bit more about the media and the press. So, as we all know, freedom of the press, First Amendment right. Press media is supposed to be the fourth branch of our government. They're supposed to be the ones that are the watchdogs to inform the citizens of what the government's doing, what the government's not doing, etc. They're not supposed to be the ones that write these creative stories to hide myths or malfeasance. They're not supposed to be the ones that manipulate the people to think a certain way about a given subject. That was never their purpose. Their purpose was to inform the general public as to what's going on, not just with our government, but I'm kind of narrowing in on that aspect. So, the press obviously is print media. The press is online websites. The press is TV networks, TV shows, news hours, etc. Right? It's all encompassing. So, what has transpired? It's grown exponentially under Trump because of the way he handles the press and what he's been doing and saying that their dirty underbelly has been exposed to the malfeasance of the modern day press. So more and more people are waking up to the fact that the media has been lying to us as a populace for decades. And by lying, I should say more manipulating. They're being used to push and reinforce a narrative that the powers that be, it could be the government guys, it could be the big pharma guys, whoever it is that's driving this, right? They're being used to push a narrative that the powers that be want pushed. Very few of them push facts, truth, data. They push narratives. They manipulate facts, they manipulate data, they manipulate truth. So I have a huge problem with the media. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in the freedom of press. I believe that the press are a necessary tool if they're doing their jobs correctly by being a watchdog of our government or big pharma or big corporate, whatever, right? But I'm kind of narrowing in on the governmental piece of it. So when we have online, when you're online debating or arguing with somebody, right? Or even prior to online, we were just arguing, debating, news articles were used as a source. You used to be able to get into kind of the whether a source is reputable, but it was kind of taken for granted in a large sense that the press was a reputable source. The press being, ABC, CBS, the affiliates, all that stuff, right? So if you got into a debate or argument with somebody and you referenced an article by ABC, well, it was taken for granted that was a reputable source. Well, now with everything that's coming online, or that's been brought out by Trump, mainly because of Trump, it started before him, so he doesn't get all credit, but because of how he's pinpointed and continually focused his attacks on the press, now everybody, or majority of people that actually are awake, if you will, are seeing what they've been doing. So you're given a specific incident, using Trump's press conference yesterday, on the 13th of April, where he showed a video of the press's statements, how they denounced his actions and said coronavirus wasn't that big a deal back in, the clips like from February or whatever. and the press went nuts. I mean, he didn't. It was their words. If you're mad about what you said, that's you. He didn't manipulate the video. He didn't edit. He didn't throw in special audio. It was just cuts of them saying, that lockdowns are unnecessary. This virus isn't as contagious as people say it is. I believe there was even a cut where the WHO had said that there's no evidence of human-to-human where humans couldn't infect other humans with the disease or the virus, etc. And people lost their minds. So the press went into full-blown, Trump's a tyrant and he's pushing propaganda. Okay, if he's using your words, that makes you a propagandist, doesn't it? In my opinion, that's what the press is. With the advent of social media and obscure news sources, obscure websites posting information, well, now the general public's turning more towards, I'll say, social media to find sources. I'm not saying people are using Facebook as a source, but people are posting articles and such from other websites, and then people are going there to read them. That's what I do. So you have to interpret, you have to kind of know the big picture to figure out what, narrative's being pushed by some of these people. But social media has also helped to greatly expose what the media is doing. It used to be the media controlled what you saw on TV. Speaking about the news broadcast, right? What you read, because they were the print media. You didn't have the resources 10 years ago that you have now. So now you can look at news articles from Australia, from New Zealand, whatever, with regards to what's happening in the United States. So you get an outsider's view of it. Well, prior to the advent of social media, you really couldn't. I mean, you could go to Australia News website, but you'd have to know what you're looking for to find a website. Well, now they're pretty much right there. Somebody posts a link to, whatever newspaper or website or whatever on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, etc. And you just click and there's the article. So social media has done a great job in exposing the lies that we've been fed for decades. So my problem with the media is they're so protected, which in some cases deservedly so, because you can't have freedom of the press if they can be litigated to death or prosecuted unnecessarily or whatever. But press to sue a journalist specifically, or a news organization in whole for something like libel is damn near impossible. They can get away with saying some outlandish shit, and as long as they have a credible source, or what they're printing is considered an opinion piece versus a news article, it's ridiculous. Press, if you're publishing or speaking about something and you're being libelous in your speech or print, I think you should be sued. I won't say prosecuted by the federal government, but you should be able to be sued. And the courts that review it should be the ones looking at going, okay, there's a spirit of the law and a letter of the law, okay? So if the letter of the law is written to where press can't be sued for libel if they have a credible source or whatever, well, what's the spirit of the law? The spirit of the law is for the press to be able to report facts without fear of persecution and repercussions from the federal government or state government or whatever, but they shouldn't be protected from the individual citizens that they libel against. Case in point, that teenager from Kentucky, where CNN settled out of court with them because of the whole defamation of character and that kind of stuff. That should be happening 2,000 times a day. If you're an elected official and news agencies or organizations are putting out information that's false, held libelous, and are kept in line as a public official. So that's fine. But if a press, journalist, a press organization, a news affiliate, whatever, is putting out bogus information and not specifically designating that information as an opinion piece, sue them as a private citizen. Because even though you hold a public office, you're still a private citizen. If someone's doing something to damage your reputation, putting out lies, publishing false information, well, they're not only damaging your political office, they're also damaging your personal credibility. And that's where they should be sued. The press has gotten away with special privilege and special protections under the courts that needs to go away. If you're printing or publishing or putting out a news story over the airwaves, whatever, a website link to an article, and you're reporting it as fact or news, and the information that you publish or post is incorrect, false, or whatever, you should be held accountable. Now, there's a lot of people, press that will do corrections to or stealth edits to their articles. No, it's not how that works. Once the damage is done, once that water leaks from the dam, it ain't going back in. Once the milk's on the floor, you can't put it back in the jug. To me, that's what those stealth edits and corrections to articles are about. No, your original article with the dramatic headlines and sensationalized headlines already created the damage. You can say, I'm sorry, but if you damage or impugn somebody's reputation, whether it's a personal, John Q. Public, Jane Q. Public person, or a public official or whatever, I'm sorry, you're not protected. My take. So going back to the social media piece, there was a whole bunch of stuff that came out and kind of got buried about the government want to control the internet, right? And the government want to control social media. And now you have all these fact checkers, and you got these people that are being deplatformed because they're not abiding by the terms and conditions of the social media page. No. The powers that be know that social media has exposed them. Social media has exposed or opened people up to seeing the lies, the mistruths, the narrative plants, that kind of stuff. So they don't want that. They want control of the narrative. They want control of what the public has access to. If you control social media platforms, if you control the internet, then you can say yes or no to information being published. So you could have, let's just say you're a left-leaning person, you want control, and all you want to see is left-leaning articles. Well, you can allow all left-leaning type press releases, articles, that kind of stuff released. You can cut out the right-leaning pieces, but what they will do, and they have done, is allow the fringe, just outlandish conspiratorial theory articles and newspapers that have absolutely no basis in truth to be published, just to show how out of touch the right-wingers are. And the same thing works in reverse. So you allow what you want to be published. You disallow what you don't want published because it's factually true or counters your narrative. But then you allow the fringe to be published so you can use that to discredit your opponents. Because you post your views, which are based in reality and all that stuff. Well, then you disallow the opposition, but you allow the fringe, because then you can say, look how out of touch these people, these nutbags or whatever are. Right? It's a technique. It's mind control. It's narrative control. There's all that stuff published about MK Ultra and all that stuff as far as, what the CIA did to do mass population control and mind control, whatever. You can read into that whatever you want. But what the press is really, really good at collectively is controlling a narrative. They'll do it in a couple of different ways. One of the ways they do it is, I call it seed planting. So they'll post an article in February, and they'll word it in such a way that people will buy it, and it'll fly under the radar per se. So it's not a big sensationalized headline or whatever. It's just a news article that's put out there. Then they won't touch it for a month or two, because they know something's coming up that they want to control any kind of negative press, or they want to control what's being said, not the actual truth, but what's being said, or they want to control how we as a populace interpret that event. So a month or two before, they'll plant a seed, maybe one more article about it or one little news blip about it. They've planted the seed. You call it the seed of doubt if you want to. So when the incident breaks or becomes open to the general public, they can go back to, well, look, we've already talked about this. This is a bunch of crap. Don't pay attention to it. Look at our article. We already discussed this. It's a non-issue. Move on. And then they'll ignore it. And then if anybody keeps bringing it up or posts or publishes information in opposition to the narrative that they planted, they'll blow you off as some kind of conspiracy theorist. We've already reported this. This is nonsense. You're lying. Whatever. And then into the general population, they'll go, oh yeah, they did talk about this. Oh yeah, this is a bunch of crap. We don't need to pay attention to this. It happens all the time. New York Times, as shitty as they are as a news entity, they perfected that. They're one of the most widely read publications on the planet. I mean, it isn't just New Yorkers that read it. Everybody reads the New York Times. So they will seed plant and to start the control of the narrative process when they know something big's about to hit, or something that's going to give their side a black eye. So when it does hit, they can say, oh, we've already talked about this. This is nothing. Move on. And people buy it. Hook, line, and sinker. And if you post anything or publish anything in opposition to that narrative, well, then you're the conspiracy theorist freak. You're some weirdo, sitting in your mom's basement, just looking at, oh, that's a non-credible source, which goes back to what I was saying before. So social media so the seed planting is one. The other one is they'll do mass repetition. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen those collages of news affiliates from different cities saying the exact same thing, using the exact same words in their news reporting. So the 5 o'clock news in Dallas, Texas will say the exact same thing the 5 o'clock news in DC did, and Seattle's 5 o'clock news, to the word, to the letter, the exact same thing. Say something enough, it becomes the truth. So not only do they seed plant for narrative control, they use repetition to narrative control. So you'll see all ABC, Fox News, NBC, whoever, all the media outlets, the legacy media, will put out a story or talking points, and all their affiliates across the country will say the exact same thing. It's gotten so bad that affiliates, I'll just use ABC as an example. So ABC is trying to control the narrative on a certain subject. Well, all the ABC affiliates in the United States on their 5 o'clock news broadcast will say the exact same thing, exact same words, but it's also gone global. So ABC affiliates in the UK, ABC affiliates in Australia, or wherever, they will put out the same story using the exact same words. That's what the media does to control how you look at a given subject. They're not reporting the Joe Friday just the facts. They're controlling the narrative or the story that surrounds the fact to obscure the way you look and see the facts. The media has perfected that. You can get into the conspiracy theories about MK Ultra and the CIA and all that stuff. I'm not getting into that. But I'm just saying that the media, the legacy media specifically, are perfectionists in that. But they've been exposed. Social media has exposed it. Now you can see the collage, prime example of all the ABC affiliates across the country. You know, they start with one to go to the next, and they're saying the exact same words. That's mind control. That's narrative control. That's controlling the response to a given set of facts or a story. So if you're not hip to it, or if you don't notice that, maybe you should start. Pick any topic that's of interest to you, okay? Whatever, I don't care what it is. It could be, Trump. It could be abortion. It could be something as benign as cherry trees in DC. Whatever. Just pick whatever interests you. Start looking at, I'll say ABC affiliates. Look at their stories. Look at NBC's stories about the same subject. Look at the different affiliates. Then you can get into the compare and contrast when you get to what CNN says about it and what Fox says about it. Two totally different sides of a coin. Very, very rarely do those two news organizations say the same thing about a given set of facts or a story. Very, very rarely. But Fox does the same thing. CNN does the same thing. All the legacy media does the same thing, where all their affiliates say the exact same thing. The only exception to some of that is the opinion personalities that have their own platform. So take like Sean Hannity for Fox, take Rachel Maddow for CNBC or MSNBC. Take the big names. Their shows are op-eds. They're opinion editorials. They're not set up, designed, or legally news. They're opinion pieces. So aside from the opinion pieces, look at what all the affiliates do. They all stay right in line. So the media is manipulating the truth. And the media is manipulating your thoughts about what the truth is. So now, going back to the whole argument thing, who's a reputable source? So if I post an article from Fox to support my argument or my defense or my side, well, now what do you get into now? You get into that's not a reputable source. Okay, well, I can say the same thing about CNN. CNN has been proven to be a non-reputable source. ABC, CBS, NBC, all of them. They've all had to retract stories, make corrections to stories, come out with a piece, in counter to the original because they got busted. So who's a reputable source? Who? So in debates and arguments, you have Roger's rules of debates, right? You have logical fallacies that people always do, ad hominem, false association, causation versus correlation fallacies, that kind of stuff. So you always have to deal with that. But when you're trying to support your argument or trying to find backing to your argument, what are we left with? It's a paradigm shift to where right now the credible source argument is a wash. So you can't use news articles as source. Now you can use it as a source to where you found certain information, but you can't cite them as an authoritative source. So as an example, if you're talking about medical stuff, you can quote medical doctors, medical journals as authoritative source. You can look at it as an appeal to authority argument, a fallacy, but you get what I'm saying in general. If you're talking about engineering stuff, architectural engineering, well, you quote architectural engineers. You quote articles out of architectural media. Okay, that's an authoritative source. Fine. But you can't use ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, Fox, CNN, because they're all biased sources. They're all illegitimate sources now. So the paradigm shift to me is awesome. We've taken, collectively we have taken back hold of the truth, or control of the truth, away from the media. So notice now, at basically the speed of light, when the legacy medias or the mainstream media puts out an article, how fast opposing views are out for the general public. Look at how fast you can take a story from Fox, CNN, whomever, find an ulterior source that is in opposition to it, and use that to go, okay, CNN's lying or Fox News is lying or whatever. Now, whether the source you're using is putting out truth, you now have to use your brain, which is the biggest part about this. The biggest part of this whole not being able to trust the media, where they've been exposed, they're a bunch of lying assholes, whatever, is now you as the individual, if you really care, have to use your brain and thought processes and logic to grasp the truth out of what's being pushed to you. The seed of doubt's been planted on your legacy mainstream media, and I think it's freaking wonderful. Have a good day.